Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. Good evening, Belly Up Fantasy Live, coming to you from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar. Like always, I'm Chase Thornton on this beautiful Wednesday night, and joining me, you know him from the Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show, you know him from the Sunday morning show. He's out on a Wednesday night living it up, Kevin Wilson. We are here to preview all the action, or the most important action at any rate, from the upcoming week here in the NFL from fantasy football perspective. And Kevin, how you doing? How's things going?
Well, Chase, I'm doing really well because, as you saw, Monday night, my team won the game, and I'm going to say it right out the gate that was the stupidest decision that'll be made by a head coach the whole rest of the season. Nobody will top that. And but in any case, the Seahawks won. I'm happy. I got my Seahawks shirt. I got my Seahawk banner back there. And so I'm good to go here. Life is good.
That was one of the most shocking developments of last week in terms of just from an NFL-wide standpoint, not necessarily fantasy specific. But, man, for anybody who didn't see the end of that game or hasn't somehow heard about it, if you've been living under a rock, the end of that game, Broncos were driving for what should have been a game-winning field goal attempt. And they got down less than a minute to go, and they let the clock run. Before a 4th and 5 play, they let the clock run from 50 seconds down to about 20 before they took a timeout. And they had, what was it, 2 or 3? They had
all 3 of their timeouts.
Yeah. They let that clock run from 50 to 20 before Russell Wilson finally took a timeout because his sideline called for it. And then, rather than going for it on 4th and 5, they trotted out Brandon McManus to try a 64-yard field goal. And missed it. And I can't for the life of me understand why they thought that was the best course of action. Now, granted, Brandon McManus has got a big leg, and he has kicked 60-plus yarders before, but they were not in the thin air of Denver. And that just seems to me, I would rather have you paid Russell Wilson $240 million. I don't want to take the ball out of his hands. I'd rather take a shot on Russell Wilson getting 5 yards and 1 inch as opposed to relying on Brandon McManus hitting 64 yards off of his foot. I heard a stat today that 41 different kickers have tried a field goal of that range in like the last 40 years or something like that, and only 4 of them have made it. So where are your odds better? Russell Wilson completing a 5.5-yard pass, or Brandon McManus hitting a 64-yarder? But came out good for you. And it paid off. If anybody had anybody on the Seahawks, or if you were betting on the Seahawks this weekend. So, all right. Well, we're going to start things off. We're going to preview tomorrow night's game, Thursday night. Now, we got a banger of a matchup last week, or we thought it was going to be, with the Bills visiting the Rams. And I thought, the first weekend of games, I thought the NFL absolutely blew it out of the water in terms of their schedule. They could not have scheduled that first weekend, I don't think, any more perfectly. Between the high-powered matchups, high-profile matchups they got, we had revenge games like Russ going back to Seattle, like Baker Mayfield playing against the Browns. We had a ton of great matchups, I thought. Now, the Rams game ended up being a bit of a letdown in terms of both competitiveness and from a fantasy standpoint. If you had anybody on the Rams, there wasn't a whole lot to go around to like other than Cooper Kupp and maybe Darrell Henderson. But the Bills look good. But tomorrow night's matchup now are 2 teams that did not disappoint last week. We've got the Chargers going to Kansas City, a division matchup against the Chiefs. And, a couple of teams that both won last week and, both put up some good fantasy numbers. The Chiefs scored more points than anybody in the league last week, beating the Cardinals 44-10. Chargers beat the Raiders last week 24-19. There were a lot of fantasy points scored by these 2 teams. I think there's going to be a lot of fantasy points scored tomorrow night, and I'm looking forward to this matchup tomorrow night. Now, Kevin, is there anything that stands out that you want to talk about first before we kind of go position by position maybe and talk about this game? Anything you think that stands out about this matchup tomorrow night that you want to make sure doesn't fly by the radar here?
Well, as you said, this is a great matchup, and I think that the Chargers, their first two games are divisional games,
Mhm.
and so people have talked up the Chargers going into the season, and I thought, well, these first two games are going to determine whether we're actually going to see something, or are we blowing smoke just like the Chargers always wind up doing.
Right.
And the thing that I'm looking at, because as you mentioned, the Chargers won the game, but Austin Eckler pretty much was invisible in that game. And so that can't be the case going forward. If the Chargers want to be a quality team week in and week out, Austin Eckler has to be there, and he has to get more than 36 yards on the ground and another 36 via the pass,
Yeah.
because that's what he had, and that's just not a winning formula, even though they actually did win the game, because they got 4 turnovers out of Derek Carr, so that definitely helped their cause. They're not going to get 4 turnovers out of Patrick Mahomes.
No,
And
no,
so,
I don't. I think you're absolutely right on that. I think, like you said, it was weird because the Chargers were basically up for that whole game. It wasn't like they weren't playing from behind and in pass mode. Even if they were in pass mode, Eckler has been a big part of their passing offense in the past. You mentioned, I mean, he only had 72 yards total. He only had 18 total, touches. He only had 4 targets in the pass game, and didn't score a touchdown. So, I mean, he definitely out-touched the other guys in the backfield. Isaiah Spiller wasn't anything.
yeah, he didn't do anything. Yeah, so
and neither did his other 2 backups.
yeah,
But,
Sony Michel, we could talk about him. If you're on his bandwagon, you need to climb off.
he had
Seriously,
he did have 7 carries for 12
7
yards.
rushes,
Yep.
12 yards.
No, he
Anybody.
was at least part of the game plan, which is encouraging.
Well, I suppose so, but you got 12 yards. You might as well. You've got no tires. You got no tread.
I think that if something were to happen to Eckler, I think that if you give him a couple, remember they didn't pick him up till just recently. He was with the Dolphins all off season. He played very well in that kind of fill-in backup. I said Ryan Fitzpatrick type running back role for the Rams last year when Akers was out. He filled in pretty well, pretty admirably. And I think that if you give him some time so he can learn this system, I don't think that I don't think he's going to, blow anybody out of the water. But if something were to happen to Eckler, honestly, I think Michelle might be the one to roster behind him, at least for this season, in terms of looking for a 1-for-1 replacement type back. But
well, that certainly seems to be the case, because Joshua Kelly had 4 touches of his own,
right,
and so that's not working.
no,
And so they're going to have to figure out what they're doing on their running backs, and besides Austin Eckler.
yeah, well, and for somebody who was drafted as a top 3 or 4 running back, in most cases, who was a first-round pick, and a lot of people had him ranked very highly. You definitely didn't get what you wanted out of him last week. I mean,
No, you sure didn't.
11.2 points is not going to do it for you in PPR. 11.2 out of your first-round draft pick.
No,
But,
because I had the 5th pick in my redraft, and I would have taken Austin Eckler if he had been there, but he was already off the board. And so that shows what people thought of him, what I thought of him. And that first game, PPR, is not happening. But I think that he's going to turn that around, and he's going to go up there, because he has to turn it around for the Chargers to have any chance in this game. Austin Eckler, especially because Keenan Allen will not play.
That's exactly right. Keenan Allen was officially ruled out today. He had said early in the week he thought there was a small chance he could play. He said at first he thought there was a chance he could play. Then they reminded him it was a Thursday night game. He said, okay, well, a small chance. He was officially ruled out today. Keenan Allen will not play tomorrow night. So,
That's right.
I agree that I think that Eckler, in that case, Eckler would be hands down the best position player that they have, the best skill player they have outside of Herbert. And I think they have to get Eckler involved if they want to be competitive with a Chiefs team that's got a ton of fire.
I agree with that. And they also need to get Mike Williams more involved. He had 2 catches.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Let's stay on the Chargers then for a second, rather than jumping over to the Chiefs and talking about their backfield. We'll get to that in a second, but you're right there. Everybody would have thought, though, Keenan Allen, left that game with a hamstring injury early, and you would have thought that Mike Williams then would have been a guy they would have leaned on to try and, close that game out. Instead, Williams only sees 4 targets on the day, 2 catches for 10 yards, doesn't score. And it's actually Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter who split most of the other reps in the game in terms of targets. Now, Palmer only had 5 yards receiving. Both men were 3 for 4, 3 catches on 4 targets, but Carter turned his into 64 yards and a touchdown. And DeAndre Carter is somebody that's getting a little bit of love right now. He's got a little bit of love on the waiver wire.
He's like 1% owned or something.
Yeah, right.
And
he
so
flashed big. And Josh Palmer's a guy that I was big on, and a lot of people were big on coming into the year, thinking that if something happened to either Allen or Williams, Palmer would be the guy to own in this offense. I still tend to think that he is. I think he's going to get the start, I think, tomorrow night opposite Mike Williams. And I think that he's the better play to have, but you can do worse than taking a shot, I guess, on DeAndre Carter. And he's definitely somebody interesting. Hamstrings are tricky. We don't know, how long it'll be before Keenan Allen can come back and be at full speed. Hopefully they don't rush him back. They don't need to. But what's your take on this now wide receiver 2 situation in Los Angeles with the Chargers?
Well, I think that if you're the Chargers, what they need to do is they need to get, you talk about wide receivers, but I think Gerald Everett, the tight end, needs to get more involved. He only had 4 targets, but he turned 3 of them for 51 yards and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did look good, but he needs more than 4 targets. And so you gotta target him a little bit more. And Palmer, I think, is a guy that you certainly need to look at, but because he had 4 targets, and as you mentioned, Carter had 61 yards, and so they're going to need to figure out what their mix is going to be, and pretty early because they only have 3 days to get ready. But they had these guys that we're talking about, like Carter, played in the preseason, and so he should be able to slide pretty easily into the lineup and he should know what the offensive playbook looks like and how to, make his cuts and all that sort of thing. So I look certainly for Carter he'll be at much more than 1% owned, I think.
He has to be now. I would think that tight end position for the Chargers is hasn't necessarily always been a real big producer since Antonio Gates left. Hunter Henry flashed a little bit. Now he's on the other coast, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But Gerald Everett is a guy that we know can play in this league. He played across the stadium actually for the Rams here several years ago. Didn't do a whole lot last year in Seattle, but so be it. But both of their top 2 tight ends, Everett and Trey McKitty, guy that I've actually got a couple shares on in Dynasty because he's a young, tall, good receiver, athletic guy. They both were 3 of 4 yesterday, but Everett turned his into 54 yards, and a touchdown. If they can, if Everett can take any of those targets away from McKitty, if either one of those guys can take us a hold of that position and really be the guy getting the targets at the tight end position, that could be a real valuable ad. I think right now Everett's the guy to have in season long, and he's the guy. He's not a bad play in daily. I don't think right now either. He's as good a dart throw as anybody who's not named Kelsey Pitts or Andrews. So, but one other note, tight end wise, with the Chargers, Donald Parham will be out again tomorrow, so it will be the Gerald Everett and Trey McKitty show again. And I think McKitty has an opportunity here to step up and show something and show that he might be the future of the position there.
That certainly is a possibility. To grow
with Justin Herbert. Let's look at the other side of the field. Let's talk about the Chiefs, because the Chiefs, like I said, they scored 44 points last week, more than any other team in the league. Patrick Mahomes, reports of his demise were greatly exaggerated. Everybody thought Hill was going to leave and Kelsey and Mahomes were going to just, go cry in the corner with their others, and it was going to be a complete mess. And Patrick Mahomes kind of put everybody on notice, I think, last week. 5 touchdowns, 360 yards, no turnovers. I mean, he looked like Patrick Mahomes is supposed to look. He looked like a almost $500 million quarterback that he is. But perhaps the biggest surprise, maybe the biggest surprise. Now, Kelsey, again, was Kelsey as well. He had 121 yards receiving on 8 catches, 9 targets. He's the overall tight end 1 after 1 week. Big shock. But maybe the biggest surprise is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, after 2.5, 3.5, or whatever years of hype, actually looked like a guy in the stat line. Now, he didn't have a ton of touches. You want to take a step back and look at this. And that's where I want to go with this, and that's what I want to talk about. Right now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire came off last week as the running back 6. Okay, but again, like you said, he only had 10 touches, three catches. He only had 3 receptions, 7 rushes, 74 total yards, and he had the 2 receiving touchdowns. Now, he's not going to turn 2 out of every 3 catches this year into touchdowns again. Right?
That's unsustainable.
No,
absolutely.
If you look at the rest of their backfield usage, now poor Ronald Jones is languishing us 4th on their depth chart and nowhere to be seen and didn't get any play in that. But Jerick McKinnon had 7 touches. He had 4 targets.
He sure did.
And had 49 yards, and the 2 of them were on the field for the same number of snaps in that game. So it wasn't like they were favoring necessarily one guy over the other. Edwards-Helaire, CH, got a little bit more run with the snaps that he was given. But McKinnon had 7 touches. CEH only had 10. And late in the game, after everything was pretty much salted away, Isaiah Pacheco, their rookie that everybody gave a lot of hype to in the preseason, especially late in the preseason, actually out-touched both of them, out-rushed both of them with 12 for 62. I think that, going forward, I'm not sold on CEH. I never have been. I took him on one team his rookie season, and we saw how that turned out. I'm not going to be jumping all over him. Now, you can do worse than to get a share of this offense. But it looks to me, and if I had to take my guess, I'm going to say early in the year, this is going to be a split between Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon. But if Pacheco shows that he can continue to keep being that kind of, 12 rushes for 60 yards, over a 5-yard per rush, that's pretty good. If he can show that he can maintain that, he could work his way into that. We could have a full-blown, 3-headed committee in this backfield. What do you make of the running backs there in Kansas City, and who's your favorite?
Well, I think for dynasty purposes, Pacheco is the guy that you want to own in that backfield. But I don't think he's going to get 12 touches, because I don't think that the Chiefs they could be, but they're not going to be up by 30 points or whatever it is. And so that's not going to happen. And Edwards-Helaire is not going to catch 2 touchdowns out of 3 passes. That's not going to happen. And so McKinnon, I like him. I think I like him more than Edwards-Helaire, because just simply because, as you've said many times, we know what we have.
Right.
And to be quite frank, Arizona looked absolutely awful. They were awful on offense. They were awful on defense. And they were not prepared for the Kansas City team speed that they showed in that game. And I think the Chargers, their defense, first of all, is much better. They put it to Derek Carr. Yeah. And I don't think they'll do that against Patrick Mahomes, but I'm going to have to, I'm going to be from Missouri right here. Okay. And I'm going to have to see.
Prepare yourself, everybody.
Yeah. Because, when we're talking about Edwards-Helaire, he's on somebody's roster already, and it's not mine. Right. And so when it comes to fantasy, I don't need to worry about him because he's already on somebody's roster. Mm-hmm. But the other 2 guys very well may be sitting on the waiver wire right now. And so those 2 guys are the ones I'm going to keep my eye on. Hope somebody picked up Pacheco, I'm sure, in Dynasty. So he may not be available either. In redraft, he's probably available. So you might want to take a
Pacheco
look at
got a
that.
lot of run, especially late in the preseason. Pacheco was started to get some more run in terms of climbing up draft boards in rookie drafts. Beginning of the year he wasn't going real high, but then he started to get a little bit of hype, and all of a sudden he started climbing that ADP there for rookie running backs. But I agree with you. I like Pacheco long term, even though Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Ronald Jones are not old. I think they're both 23. They're not old, but I like Pacheco long term there because I think, like we both have said, we know what we get with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Ronald Jones looks like he may be falling off the face of the planet. Jerick McKinnon is a guy who had some hype before he signed that free agent deal in San Francisco. Looked like he was going to be the guy. Got hurt, missed the year, and he's kind of been a bounce around backup since then in San Francisco and in Kansas City. But he's a guy that's got some talent. I mean, he was signed to be a guy before he got hurt. And, I agree that he's going to get some run. I think that Edwards-Helaire probably still gets the bulk of the touches for now, but this is definitely a situation to monitor. I don't necessarily want a piece of this backfield yet, but it's going to be one of the most high-powered offenses in the game. So you could do worse than to have a share of it somewhere. And if it means picking up one of their three-headed running back monster, then so be it. Now we want to talk about three-headed monsters. We can go to the Chiefs receiving corps. Without Tyreek Hill, there doesn't seem to be that alpha dog who's going to get the big share of looks. We know that Travis Kelce is always going to be a big factor in their passing game. But in terms of receivers, they went out, they signed Juju Smith-Schuster. They go out, they signed Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and they kind of retooled this. They drafted Sky Moore, and
who was invisible, by the way.
He had one. He had the one pass for 30 yards. He ended up making a pretty nice play on, but. He was not. He didn't get the play, and like I said, I've said this before. This will apply across the board, and probably for the rest of the season. Remember that the Jamar Chases and Justin Jeffersons of the world are the exceptions to the rule when it comes to receivers blowing up in their first year. Even the guys that get a lot of run typically don't have that explosion and become a top guy right away. It's not like the running back position where we see guys every year. A rookie steps up somewhere and becomes a top 10, top 12 startable guy. I think that because this receiver,
yeah, we've already seen that with the rookies. We've already seen that.
Right.
Olave missing, right? Christian, you're
yeah, we'll get to him in a minute.
For the Packers.
Yeah,
missing,
we'll get to them in a minute.
Right? Okay, I'm sure we will. But your point is well taken. Yes.
It was such a hyped draft class that I think everybody was so excited to get their hands on these guys. Well, in Dynasty, sure, yeah, grab them. But in redraft, there wasn't a lot of there's not a lot of evidence for any of these guys yet. And Sky Moore is a guy that was a darling of the preseason. Everybody was so excited thinking he'd take over. He's not going to be Tyreek Hill day one. Nobody is Tyreek Hill.
No.
If anything, they've still got McCole Hardman, who is faster than lightning. They've still got MVS, who is a deep threat faster than lightning. And they've got Smith-Schuster now, who has been a guy in the past and been a number one guy. Target-wise, Schuster saw 8 targets. Hardman saw 6. MVS saw 4. And like I said, more.
Yeah, MVS was 4 all the way around. 4, 4, and 44.
Yep. And he's a guy, like I've said, as a Packer fan, I've seen it. I'm not excited about him.
No.
But
if you want to go on the waiver wire and pick up MVS, you just go right ahead and do that.
Please do so, because he won't have to be in my way when I'm scrolling through looking for somebody else. But between Smith-Schuster and Hardman, who's your guy, and who are you thinking? Now they saw 8 targets and 6 targets apiece. Who's your guy in that Kansas City passing?
Well, Smith-Schuster is the established player. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that Hardman really had going for him was he had 1 touchdown. Yep. But he only had 16 yards on the day. Schuster had 79.
Yep.
And so I kind of that they're spreading out the ball here, because if you remember when it comes to guys like Devontae Adams and guys like Cooper Kupp, who had, the 17 targets and whatever else, what was the result of those games? They lost.
Right.
Right. So I like the way that they're going to spread this ball out, and you don't know for sure who he's going to throw the ball to, but Smith-Schuster is the guy I'd be targeting in this offense, because he's probably praying, thanking, the Heavenly Father right now that he doesn't have to worry about Roethlisberger not being able to throw the football to him. And he's got Mahomes now, and we've seen when he was in Pittsburgh what kind of receiver he can be, and I think that he can be that, and maybe even more in this Kansas City offense. And so I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far out of Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, I agree. We like I said before, we've seen, and you just said, Smith-Schuster has been the guy. Mecole Hardman and MVS are two guys that they may be about a half a foot difference in height and weight, but there are a couple of guys that seem like we're always waiting on them to, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year. Mecole Hardman's going to be a guy. MVS is going to be a guy. And they kind of run the same one trick. They're both a couple of guys that can blow the top off and take a deep threat, but you're only going to take a couple of those shots a game. Whereas Juju Smith-Schuster is going to get run all over the field. He's going to get run in the red zone. He's going to get run between the 20s. And Kelsey's going to take, the lion's share of what's left over. I agree. Again, high-powered offense, get yourself a piece of it where you can. You can do worse than have Hardman or MVS on your bench. But of the three, I think, of the four, if you want to include more, Smith-Schuster's the guy to have right now. All right, folks, we're gonna step aside. We're gonna take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors, Manscaped, here, and then on the other side of that, we're gonna look at the Sunday night game between the Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers. Don't go anywhere. Let's listen to the dulcet tones of Dan Mater telling us about.
That's right. Dan, take it away.
Football is back, baby. We're back to seeing Mahomes sling beautiful balls all over the field, and your friends at Manscaped are here to help you sling your beautiful balls all season long. With Manscaped's state-of-the-art tech, we'll have your weapon looking more loaded than the AFC West. Football may be rough, but your ball care doesn't have to be with Manscaped. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Meet the best valued bundle yet for the Manscaped Pocket Rockets, the Platinum Package. At quarterback, the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, a wily vet who makes sure the unit is running smoothly and scoring nonstop with proprietary advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower limits mistakes and protects the ball. Plus, it's waterproof, so the weather conditions are no issue. At running back, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, built to bust through all the right holes. A hairless nostril just helps it keep a nose for the end zone. On the offensive line, we have our unsung heroes, the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, the Trent Williams and Corey Lindsley of Sack Protection, standing strong to keep your boys fresh and clean through all four quarters. At wideout, the cleanest duo in the league, the Ultra Premium Body Wash and Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo plus Conditioner. With their rugged scent, they attract both the ball and all the ladies in the crowd. Plus, these two leave your skin and scalp feeling more hydrated. That means more plays on the field and less water breaks. At tight end, the product makes your end look tight. Manscaped's anti-chafing boxer briefs, a dedicated jewel pouch to increase ball handling, and a cool, steady vibe thanks to their moisture-wicking fabric. On defense, there's only one thing you need, the aluminum-free Ultra Premium Deodorant. With refined cologne, quality fragrance, it keeps sweat and locker room scents from making any ground. Plus, it dries clear so the opponent won't even know what hit them. To top it all off, we throw in the best coach in the league, the Shred Travel Bag, as a free bonus. Built to hold a team together, this travel-sized bag has a fumble-resistant zipper. This has got to be a Super Bowl winning roster, but don't take my word for it. Go to manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASy. Manscaped for turning your player into an MVP.
All right, we are back.
Doesn't get any
Excellent.
better than listening to Dan, that's for sure.
Nope. He does a great job with those, and Manscaped does a great job taking care of your nether regions. So let's move on now to the Sunday night game. Let's talk about it, the game that's closest to my heart probably out of all these. The Bears at the Packers. And there's not much to say, in my opinion, about the Bears from last week, and I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory way. All I mean is I don't think you can take a whole lot of anything away from that game last week that was played in an absolute swamp monsoon conditions. The Bears lost the 49ers 19-10. And Fields only threw the ball 17 times. He only had 8 completions, 121 yards. He did have the 2 touchdowns, but he only ran the ball 11 times for 28 yards. Nobody had a good day for that team. Cole Kmet didn't even have a catch on 1 target. And it was not a good day for anybody on that Bears offense or defense for that matter. But again, I don't think you can take anything away from that. Is there anybody on the Bears though, even if it's in good conditions, is there anybody on the Bears that you actually have an interest in right now, Kevin?
I would have to say that the only player that I would really be looking at is Herbert right now, because Montgomery was the starter, but Herbert had the production.
Mm-hmm.
And so if hopefully your running backs are not already, broken down and, jacked up and stuff like that. But if they are, Herbert is a player that I think that you can look at. Montgomery is not a player that I have a whole lot of confidence in. You should be able to have confidence in him. We've seen that he can do it, but there's just when the rubber tires hit the road, they go flat for some reason with him. And so if you're looking for a player in fantasy, I would keep my eyes on Herbert. And you mentioned Kmet. I have been waiting for him to hit the afterburners just a little bit, and he's one of those players that you talk about. Well, he's a disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe he'd be doing a Dalton Schultz, kind of jump this year, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And only thing that because I have Fields in one of my dynasty leagues, and so if he wants to go ahead and go off, that's totally fine with me. And but he's not my QB1 by any stretch.
No, I think when I'm looking at the Chicago offense, Fields, he may end up being one of those quarterbacks that has a rushing floor. Their pass game just does not look sorted out right now at all to me, and it didn't last year either.
No,
I think
Mooney should be a guy that you can depend on, but he's not.
He's a good player. He's one of those guys I would love in real life. I don't necessarily want him on my fantasy team because he's not part of an efficient, good passing offense. And Kmet's the same way. I think Kmet's a decent football player, sure. But I don't have any shares of either guy. I take that back. I think I have shares of Mooney in one league, and that's it. Otherwise, I don't have any Bears barely on any rosters at all because I'm not convinced that their offense has it sorted out yet. And even if
you can't be convinced off that last game because, like you said,
no, how do you know?
They were doing boat races on the field.
Yeah, nobody looked good during that. You can't take anything away from that game for the 49ers standpoint either. But I think that he threw 2 touchdowns, but both of those touchdowns were the only catch that the guy had on the day. Dante Pettis broke the big one, I think, and then I can't even remember who got the other one because it doesn't really matter. It was the only catch the guy had on the day. Doesn't matter
because So
then that's the only reason
you're playing in a 32-team league.
23.
He's got no place on any fantasy roster.
But I think there is a lot of intrigue across the field on the Packers, and it's not.
There certainly is.
From the standpoint of a Packer fan, it's not necessarily good intrigue. After 1 week, Aaron Rodgers is QB 32 in fantasy.
Wow, that
Yeah,
you
he
wouldn't
had
think
an
that would
absolute
happen if
terrible
he
game.
played, played the game and going backwards.
Right, yeah, left-handed and backwards. He normally, I mean, mistakenly falls into 2 touchdowns even every game. And
Right.
you
He
think
gets that
yeah,
when he's doing that when he goes to his left and throws the ball up there. Maybe it's because he wasn't playing the Lions. Maybe
well,
that's what it is.
and now if we take a step back, we said we were going to get to him, and we'll get to him right now. Obviously, the first play of the game they had, he goes up top for Christian Watson, and blew his guy away. The rookie second-round pick that everybody's got such high hopes for, and the ball went right through his hands and hit the turf.
And there it was.
even
What
made-
did we say way back when we
that
were
was his
talking about
problem.
him in the preseason
Mhm.
and before they even started the exhibition games? He drops the football.
And that's the problem too, being a young guy and playing with Aaron Rodgers, is Aaron Rodgers wants to be
And
able to trust his guys.
that's
He
right.
couldn't have-
And
he
so
could not
if you
have
drop
laid
the
that ball
football
in there
from
any
Aaron
better.
Rodgers, then he's going to back the truck away from you. But the problem is he doesn't have anyone really that he can turn to right now that he has confidence in. Lazard still looks like he's not going to play. And maybe he will,
did
but it
return to
doesn't
the
look
practice field today at least, which is a good
okay.
sign. He did practice.
So he
today,
may
but
play, but even he is a guy that has not flashed that he's a quality receiver.
there's some questions about him definitely coming
Yeah.
to the year. I'm still
So-
high on him, but
So
You're right.
they're going to have to figure out what exactly they're going to do besides throw it to the backs, and and that's where they stand. And everybody was looking for Tanyan, and I had him a couple years ago, but since then, he's not a tight end that I want on my fantasy team. He should be
right.
because
He
he's
should
a
be
guy
on a
that
high-powered offense,
played, and he scored, what was it, 10 touchdowns, whatever it was, a couple years ago.
But that was
And,
part of the problem. Is that he
right.
scored all those touchdowns on only like 52 catches. He's
Right.
not going to turn
Which
one
we
of every
knew,
11
which
catches
we knew
into
was
a touchdown.
unsustainable, which of course it was.
Mhm.
And but if he would just catch the football, then at a tight end position, as weak as that position is, he should have a whole lot of value, but he doesn't.
No,
And,
Tanyan he played 22 snaps in the game only, but he was 3 of 5 for only 36 yards. Yeah, that's a complete dart throw. He's not going to turn 1 out of every 11 catches into a touchdown like he did in his big breakout year 2 years ago. Of course, last year he was hurt most of the year. Josiah DeGuara, the other tight end for them, only played 15 snaps, but he was 2 of 2 for 28 yards. There is opportunity there in that passing game.
There
for
is.
the tight end
There's
position.
opportunities all over the place. So who's
The-
going to
the
rise
lack
up and
of-
grab it?
Yeah, the lack of here we go.
Are we still doing it? Okay. Well, while Chase figures out what he's got going on over here, and so when it comes to the Packers, I think the Bears are the tonic that the Packers need to get, because whenever they play the Bears, then good things happen for Green Bay. And I know Chase, you're the Green Bay guy, but I grew up not far from Chicago. I'm not a Bears guy. My brother is. And I know he'd like to see some Bears action going on right there. But as you mentioned, with the whirlpool that they were playing in last week, we can't know what's going to happen with the Bears in this game coming up. No? All right. So I don't even know if I'm getting hurt. Am I getting hurt? Oh, okay. There I am. All right. So let's move on a little bit. And if Chase comes back in here, see what we can do here. No? Okay, I'm it. All right, so let's see, where can we talk about now? How about if we talk about something that's because I'm in the Dallas area right here, and so I want to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys. Now we all know what happened this past Sunday night. The Cowboys looked like absolute doo-doo. All right. And that was even before the injury to Dak Prescott. And you with us?
All right, am I with you?
Yeah, you're
Excellent.
back.
Hey, all right.
Okay.
So, you want to talk about the Cowboy game and the Bengals game? Whew.
Okay. So,
yeah, no, let's
since
go ahead.
I was going it alone there for a second. And
Yeah.
but I think when you talk about this game from a fantasy perspective, the player that's going to blow the doors off the place, I think, is Dalton Schultz out of necessity. Because who is Rush going to throw the football to?
Right.
I think that while that Dak Prescott is sidelined, that Dalton Schultz will get the most target of any tight end in football. Now, whether that turns into production or not is another question altogether.
Right. And I think you're right there. I think you're right from the standpoint of I think that Schultz is going to get a lot of run. I mean, he already sees, run. He's a big part of their offense. 9 targets last week, 7 catches, 62 yards. Didn't score, but he still put up a pretty good stat line for a tight end in this league. But when you look at what their wide receivers did last week,
Wide receivers, you talk about stuck in concrete.
CeeDee Lamb had 11 targets and only caught 2 he had 2 catches on 11 targets.
I am absolutely thrilled that I have nothing whatever to do with CeeDee Lamb. Okay.
Well,
and
he looks even better now that Prescott is hurt. It looks even better to not have CeeDee Lamb now that Prescott.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what they're thinking running Noah Brown out there for as many targets as he got last week.
So let me, because I wrote that down. Noah Brown
was
had
5
9
of 9
targets,
for 68 yards.
Okay? 9 targets, 68 yards. And as I mentioned, I'm in the Dallas area. I couldn't point Noah Brown out if he was the only guy in the room. so all right. So he's not somebody I'm going to put my eggs in any kind of basket with.
No.
And so if you have CeeDee Lamb, you have to ride it out.
Oh,
so
you probably took him in the first or second round. He went in the first round in some places, but you have to ride him out. You have to ride it. He is still their top receiver.
And
he is still their top receiver. So you have to hold on to that.
And
but I think the
thing that about this CeeDee Lamb, the thing that really gets me, because he was targeted 11 times.
Yeah. 2 catches.
But he only had 2 catches. 2. Now that is absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah.
I don't think that I can't imagine that there's a player out there that had 11 targets at any time and only came away with 2 catches.
That's probably a pretty rare stat line. I'm going to agree with you on that. Right. For 29 yards.
Yeah, for 29 yards. So we're talking about Cooper Rush. He possibly couldn't do worse throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb than that.
No.
Couldn't do any worse.
You have to ride it out because Lamb is going to be there. He's still going to be their top option from a wide receiver standpoint. And I agree with you that Dalton Schultz should get some looks, if for no other reason than a lot of times, a tight end is a check down type pass. If he's not the primary option, he's a check down, and Cooper Rush is probably going to be checking down a bit.
He's going to be checking down a lot, so maybe that gets some more passes thrown to Zeke. Maybe that gets some passes thrown to Tony Pollard, who
one of the things I found
completely absent from the completely.
No, they both had only 2 targets on the day last week.
I don't.
And Ezekiel Elliott
had 10 rushes. 10.
Yeah. Ezekiel Elliott
ain't making it.
he has a history of being a dual threat back. They've thrown to him, they run with him, they feed him the ball. You know, feed Zeke, let Zeke eat, right? But Tony Pollard was a guy that was getting some hype as a guy that was going to be used kind of in that hybrid
talked
role.
about as being the best value out of the two.
And a guy that was going to run kind of like Aaron Jones was getting that same hype in Green Bay, and then it didn't materialize. Aaron Jones didn't have as many targets as AJ Dillon last week. Tony Pollard only had 2 targets in this game, only ran the ball
That
6
ain't
times.
making it.
No,
I'm sorry. So,
but I can't
McCarthy,
understand why
if you're
that
watching
happened.
this show right now, that is not making it.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know if Big Mike's watching, tuning in or
He-
not.
you know,
But if he
I don't
is,
know if he is either. Maybe he gets one of his assistants to watch our show. Who knows? But
one of the things I found disappointing about, I mean, Jalen Tolbert wasn't even active.
gone. Yeah.
And I mean, I know that they've got him waiting in the wings. They're waiting to try and get Michael Gallup back healthy. But yeah, when you're down to those options, why would you not utilize guys like Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott more? I don't understand why.
I don't get it
only
either
gets
at all.
two targets in a game like that, and why you only use Ezekiel Elliott, who, for better or worse, has he lost a step? He's probably lost a step.
I don't know. He had
No, 'cause you
5.2
can't-
yards per carry. That's
You can't-
excellent.
Yeah, and they didn't give him the ball enough to know
And only
to watch
10.
him run, right?
So
That should be. They need to get out and get some things going with Ezekiel.
absolutely they
especially
do.
now. They
And-
have some problems offensive line wise, which is weird to say for a Dallas team.
That's right.
I've been watching them all the way back to Jimmy Johnson days and Troy Aikman days. It's weird to say that the Cowboys have problems on their offensive line, but between the injuries they've had and the losses that they had in free agency and that, I don't know that there's a whole lot of better times ahead for this team. Dak Prescott's going to miss a month or 2. Now, Jerry Jones today is talking about how he might play in 4 weeks.
Yeah, he's talking about 4
that.
weeks, which I completely discounted. But our own Brian from the Injury List podcast said that is actually realistic.
Might be realistic, but I don't know if it's
Brian Scott
positive. I don't know if it's right, and I don't know if it's good.
I don't know
especially
either, but
depending on
if
how
he
these
says
next
it's
4 games
realistic,
go.
then it may happen.
Depending on how these next 4 games go with Cooper Rush, I mean, if they find themselves at the end of 5 or 6 weeks at 2-4, 1-5, do you really want to rush Dak Prescott back thinking you're going to salvage something out of this season, especially if the Eagles take off and run away with things and can string a couple of wins together here? If you find yourself 3 games,
knowing
3-4 games
Jerry
out
Jones, like we know,
right, and that he puts
if
himself in the
Dak
mix and does not
Prescott
get
is
out.
healthy, he's going to play. If the Cowboys are 1-10,
Yeah. And
Okay.
that's
just
that
the
may
way
be
he
a,
is.
well,
and
healthy
him
is a
and then-
relative term there too. And I hope they don't rush him back and,
Right.
and do more
And,
damage.
that's just when it comes to Jones. Him and his, Kool-Aid is always spiced up with sunshine and everything like that. And so he's going to think the season is still intact if they're like I said, if they had 1 win and 8 losses.
Now, looking at the other side of the field, the Bengals, they came off a depressing loss.
Absolutely depressing. There's not a team that the Bengals want to lose to less
Right.
than the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right?
And Joe Burrow, first of all, you cannot throw the football 53 times.
No. Especially
Okay.
when you've got a guy like Joe Mixon, in the backfield.
Right.
You've got a good running game.
And he had 5 turnovers. Not the team. He had 5 turnovers.
Personally. Yep.
And so they had that. Their offensive line is still he got sacked 7 times.
With all the
Which
retooling
sounds-
they did, that was a disappointment for them for sure.
It was
now.
absolutely because that's the Super Bowl all over again.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And they spent all this money, and they might as well just back the truck up to my house and drop the money off here. So
Now, if we want to look at the Bengals, I don't think Joe Burrow's going to throw 5 interceptions every game.
No,
I'm still
I
in
don't
on
think
him.
so
I still
either.
like him. I still have him as a top 10 type play.
absolutely,
As a quarterback. I still like Joe Mixon as a top 10 running back type play.
Well,
Now, if you look at their
because Joe
receiver
Mixon
core,
had 82 yards rushing, so you can live with that.
No, he did.
You can
he
live
did
with
just
that.
fine.
And
But Jamar Chase came away from the week. I think he's wide receiver 4.
he had
after one game.
16 targets.
Yeah, 16
As
targets.
we
10
mentioned
catches.
earlier, all these guys that had 16, 17, 18 targets, their teams did not win.
I think the thing to watch from this game for the Bengals here now,
There's
T.
my
Higgins
cat right
practice. T. Higgins may play. It comes out today. The news today is that T. Higgins may be trending
right.
towards being able to play, and
Because
if
he has a
can
concussion.
then concussions nobody knows about. I mean, he
Right.
he could look
There's
great today,
certain
and then
tests he
tomorrow
has
come
to
out and not
pass
be able
and
to.
whatever,
Right.
and the team's got no say in it.
Now, if Higgins misses time, Tyler Boyd makes a good play. Tyler Boyd is a great. I mean, Tyler Boyd
I've
might
got
be the
him
best
on my
third wide
fantasy
receiver in the
team.
game.
He needs more than 4 catches out of 7 targets.
Right. Tyler Boyd might be the best third wide receiver in the game. So if Higgins misses any kind of time, including this one game, Tyler Boyd makes a great play. He'd make a great play in daily, I would think, as well. I would jump on Tyler Boyd if I had the opportunity.
Yeah, if you can do that. And another, because Hayden Hurst is a tight end that we've talked about before, had 8 targets. You can certainly live with that. And
this is the kind of offense that Hayden Hurst can actually get can actually do some damage in. You know, he's been a bit of a disappointment the last couple of years, but he had a couple of good seasons there in Atlanta.
Well, he got kicked by Andrews over there in Baltimore.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that.
No, not at all. But if a guy in this offense is going to see 8 targets every week, especially at the tight end position, that could be something to monitor. He could be a guy,
Absolutely,
coming up
it could be.
And like I said, especially if Higgins has to miss any time, that kind of bumps everybody behind him in the hierarchy up one. He was probably number 2 in the hierarchy behind Chase. And I think that, Hurst bears some watching. All right, folks, we're going to take a step back here. We're going to hear from our other sponsor here. And then we are going to come back and we're going to look at the Monday night game. Here we go.
Football is back, baby, and our new sponsor, True Classic, wants you to look and feel your best even after a couple of brewskis or going full force on your fantasy football draft. Sure, it's football season, but it's also butt to couch season. Luckily, True Classic has the absolute best fitting clothing a man can buy. Snug in the arms and chest with a little extra space in the torso, their t-shirts are designed to keep you cozy and highlight your best assets no matter what you're up to. So if your special someone is upset that you're watching football all day, at least you can look good doing it. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men find the perfect fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at TrueClassic.com. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with 6-packs, but most of us aren't packing anything but a few beers. Fellas, you are wearing the wrong clothes. True Classic tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt you can always confidently throw on. It's about time to get your fit together, so upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic and get 25% off at TrueClassic.com with promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Free shipping included on purchases over $100. That's 25% off at TrueClassic.com with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. If there's one bet you should make this football season, it's on True Classic. True Classic, look good, feel good.
All right, here we are back. Now we're going to move on to the Monday night games. And the Monday night games, plural. Remember, there's 2 Monday. We got a 2-for on Monday night this week, which is weird. Normally they have done that on opening weekend.
Right. They didn't do that this night, I guess, because they didn't want to detract from Russell Wilson at Seattle. Maybe that's what it was.
Well, yeah, who the hell knows? But either way,
who knows what was up with that.
Week 2, we are getting a 2-for on Monday night with the Titans and the Bills and the Vikings visiting the Eagles. Now, first off, Titans and the Bills. We all saw what the Bills did to the Rams last week. If you're a football fan, that was the first game of the year. You should have been watching last Thursday night, and you saw the Bills absolutely decimate the Los Angeles
If you remember,
Rams.
though, they decimated them in the second half because it was 10-10 at the half.
It was 10-10 at the half, but to be honest with you, I don't think it looked necessarily even that close. That game was a
but it didn't look like it was headed to 31. that
No,
did.
it didn't look like it was going to be a 3-touchdown type blowout. But one of the things I found interesting, one of the things I think we need to monitor going forward was the backfield usage between
That's right.
Devin Singletary, Zach Moss,
Right. Which
and
I have.
James Cook.
So I was
And
very pleased about that.
James Cook,
Okay.
nowhere to be
he was
seen after a
absent.
fumble.
Absolutely.
His first carry of his career. Now, keep in mind that's not necessarily a harbinger of a terrible career. Kareem Hunt fumbled on his first career carry too, if everybody remembers correctly. But James Cook absolutely disappeared from their game plan. And Sean McDermott had a quote that came out after the game. He said something along the lines of, "Well, when that happens to a guy, we like to take him out, give him some time to kind of catch his breath, get his mind right, and then we get him back in there." Well, if you're going to get him back in there, you want to get him another catch. It's like
exact opposite. I want to put him right back in there so he doesn't.
It's like giving your quarterback a short completion after an interception, right? Or it's like, it's you want to get the guy involved, not just like, okay, back in the game, like, okay, go run a fake to the right for one snap and then come back out of the game and stew about it all. The kid's first game could not have gone probably worse for him. But what I found interesting of the backfield usage there for the Bills, I have been high on Devin Singletary all offseason. I thought he looked great at the end of last year.
I drafted him, so I'm right there with you.
I drafted him in quite a few places, and I have high hopes for him. But I found it interesting that when you look at their usage, Zach Moss got
that's right. Zach Moss
got quite a bit of run.
Surprise, and he's a guy
game
that you want to see if he's on your waiver wire.
Right? Zach Moss got 6 targets to 2 for Devin Singletary. Now he did lose a fumble, which hurts a little bit too. Devin Singletary, it was a little more sure-handed than that, but they weren't all that far apart carry-wise. Singletary got 8 carries for 48 yards. Moss got 6 carries. He only had 15 yards, but those 6 targets, their workload.
Anytime you can get 6 targets in that Bills offense as a player, you want exposure to.
He actually had more of a workload than Devin Singletary did, and I found that very interesting. Now, I'm still higher on Singletary than I am on Moss.
I am too, but
I think that with the two of them there,
Moss is the guy to target on the waiver wire.
On the waiver wire, if he is available in your league, he's definitely, again, high-powered offense. You can do worse than to get any piece of that pie you can get. On the receiver side of things for them, then we saw, the 2 top receivers, Diggs and Gabe Davis, looked like the 2 top receivers. They combined for 210 yards, I think, receiving. They both looked phenomenal. I was thrilled that Gabe Davis got the first offensive touchdown of the year. I'm a big Gabe Davis guy. I've got him. I'm almost across leagues. I jumped on him.
I'm right there with you. I read some other people talk that he's not going to be worth the hype, which discount that completely.
No, he looked every bit of it. He only had 5 targets, but he caught 4 of them, 80 yards, touchdown, including the long 47-yarder. But again, the big question here was, for me, everybody knew Diggs was going to be good, and I thought that Davis was not a question coming in. But the slot position with Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder, McKenzie became one of those kind of preseason darlings, and I wasn't giant high on him coming in. And I've said as much on, on this program.
Right.
But if you take a look at how what run they got, they split the targets pretty evenly. Isaiah McKenzie had 3 targets, but he caught 2 of them. He had the touchdown between the 2. Jamison Crowder, 4 targets for 3 catches. He had 28 yards. It looks early in the year. It looks like the 2 of them are going to split what we would think of as the Cole Beasley targets from last year.
Yeah, if that's a split situation, that kind of dampens.
It dampens both
of those players.
Higher on Crowder coming in because being the veteran, I thought he would get more of the run. Isaiah McKenzie, though, I mean, he looks good, but if they're going to continue to split targets, it's gonna you should temper your expectations for both of them. I think they're both rosterable because this is such a high-powered offense. I don't normally, advocate having the 3rd or 4th, receiver on a team, but if you're going to do it on any team, this is probably the team to do it for.
Absolutely.
What do you make of the two of them? Do you have any shares of either one of them in any leagues?
I do not, and I'm kind of glad that I don't, because of just what we talked about with them splitting the. I'm not too aware of teams that split the slots
Mhm.
a lot. It seems like they got a guy, they put him in the slot, and that's where he is, and he's the slot receiver.
Right.
But over here, you've got two guys you can line up. He go out there and play, and the next guy comes in, he plays, and so I don't have any shares of those guys, but I could see why you might want to, because they are in that Buffalo offense.
And I do like McKenzie long term, and I like him.
Long term,
I like him dynasty
we're
wise.
talking
I
dynasty.
think McKenzie, yes.
Absolutely, get yourself some McKenzie right there. We've talked about that on the show when it was the dynasty show, and
Right.
and I do like him in that setting, and so much more than
Let's jump to the other side of the field there. Let's jump to
Crowder,
the
yeah.
Tennessee Titans and talk about them now for a minute here now.
Wow, you talk about an absolute train wreck. Absolute
Well-
train wreck. That was one of the most. There was a lot of shocking results that came out of this past first
There
week.
were a lot of shocking results.
And the Giants going into Tennessee and pulling out the victory has to rank right there at the top, if not
And
at the top.
From a fantasy standpoint, there was absolutely no telling what was going to happen in this game. I think everybody thought, oh, hey, King Henry's back. Great. Robert Woods is here. He'll probably get some catches. Treylon Burks will get some looks. We come out of that game with Kyle Phillips having, only the rest of the receiving core combined, the rest of the wide receivers combined only had one more target than Kyle Phillips himself did as a rookie. And he was not the hyped up rookie coming into this year. It was Treylon Burks.
Right.
Kyle Phillips, 6 catches on 9 targets, 66 yards. Burks, a distant second with 3 catches for 5 targets. Robert Woods, 1 catch for 13 yards on 2 targets. From a
I
guy
would
who
like
we've
somebody
seen
to
be,
explain that to me.
he's been a
Explain
wide
that.
receiver 2 in this league. From a fantasy standpoint, he has been a top 24 type, a starting receiver in this league before.
I've had him in the past. I don't have him this year, but I've had him in the
I
past.
can't understand where he was in their game plan that he only
I
got
thought
2 targets in that game.
between Ryan Tannehill and him being both veteran players would mesh
Right.
much better.
Right.
Maybe it's because neither Ryan Tannehill, I don't think set a foot on the practice field in a game, and so. But
there's probably a good chance that Kyle Phillips was available. If you guys do Wednesday night waivers, who knows what the waivers are in your league? It's different across all platforms. But if you've got a Wednesday night waiver,
yeah, it's Wednesday morning in my league.
Yeah, if you've got a Wednesday night waiver, and if Kyle Phillips is still available, he's still a guy that could be out there. I'm not going to jump on him unless you've got a deep bench, where you can afford the roster spot, or if you are desperate for help at wide receiver. I still like Treylon Burks longer term, and I still like Robert Woods over the course of the season to even out, because I just think he's too good a player to only get 2 targets a game from.
He
like
has
you
to
said.
be. He has to be.
has
There
to
are a
be
lot
more
of players that draft. A lot of guys that drafted him, and I would have.
So
if he had been there when my turn came up. He was not, so I didn't select him. But
now, looking at the Tennessee backfield though now, okay, Derrick Henry gets 21 carries, 82 yards.
You can live with that.
Yeah, you could live with that. Dontrell Hilliard comes in, gets 2 carries for 8 yards, but he catches 3 or 4 balls for 2 touchdowns and takes all the scoring away from everybody else on this team.
And
ends up as running back 4 for the week.
Yeah, before anyone gets too excited about Dontrell Hilliard, all right, that is completely unsustainable.
No.
Absolutely unsustainable. I've seen a lot of people and a lot of sites and whatever recommend him as a pickup on the waiver wire. I did not do that simply because he is not going to get 2 touchdowns He may get 2 touchdowns the whole rest of the season.
No, he was there last season. He was there last season, remember, and did not take a hold of that situation when Derrick Henry was out. Dontrell Hilliard had his opportunity to kind of grab a hold of that and run with it, no pun intended. And remember, Deontay Foreman was the one who actually ended up being, the much better play that way. But I think, if you look at their usage, he only had 2 carries for 8 yards, but he had more targets than anybody else in the backfield. And I think that may continue to be his role going forward. They maybe it will more, but like I said, that third down back. I think if Henry goes down, again, I'm not worried about Derrick Henry getting any usage. Derrick Henry is still going to get volume. He's still going to get his usage. I'm not worried about Derrick Henry going forward. He's not going to get outscored 2-1 by
Unfortunately, going up against the Bills was probably not the best
week,
way.
Probably not the week for it. But going forward, if you want to look at Derrick Henry, I still think that if he goes down, Hilliard's role probably doesn't change much. He probably remains. He may get a little bit more run, but he probably remains that third down back. I still think Haskins is probably the guy who would come in. The rookie, Hassan Haskins, big running back from Michigan, would be the guy to come in on the early downs. But you're right, against Buffalo this week, that's going to be tough sledding for anybody.
Right.
I am not real big on anybody on that Tennessee team this week.
Right, especially because they don't play till Monday, then you're leaving yourself open.
Right.
If you're playing anybody on these Monday night games, of course, if you got Josh Allen and guys like that, you have to play them. But anybody else but the Stars.
Yeah, anybody outside of Henry on Buffalo, I'm not on Tennessee.
Don't play him on Monday night.
Okay, so now let's talk real quick before we sign off here and let everybody get back to their lives and on the Wednesday night here, midnight mass and all that. Let's talk about the other Monday night game real quick. We've got the Minnesota Vikings coming off a win against my Packers, a big win against my Packers, visiting the Eagles, and the Eagles were a team that scored a ton of points against the Detroit Lions.
Let's also not get overly excited.
They gave up
about them because, as you mentioned, it was against the Lions,
and they gave up a ton of points against.
They
the Lions
sure did.
Well.
35 points. So, if you've got Minnesota players, I just said, bench the guys from Tennessee. If you got Minnesota, I think you need to fire those guys up.
Now, obviously, I'm not going to tell anybody they shouldn't play. Dalvin Cook. We don't have to talk about Dalvin Cook. We know Dalvin Cook's going to be Dalvin Cook in this game. That's great. I probably don't have to tell you to play.
We don't
Justin
need to talk
Jefferson.
about Jefferson either.
He's.
Okay.
I do not think he will be 28 yards Jefferson, wide open on every.
I took him 5th overall.
Play. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not going to be as wide open as he was. I don't know what the Packers' defensive game plan was. You would think that it would have been to take away Dalvin Cook up front and Justin Jefferson in the back. I would take my chances against Adam Thielen. I would take my chances against Irv Smith. I would take my chances against KJ Osborne. I do not want to take my chances with Justin Jefferson, especially the idea of leaving him wide ass open and leaving a 12-yard bubble around him for every play.
Right.
But you're going to play Justin Jefferson. You're going to play.
You're going to do that. Don't be starting Irv Smith. Okay, don't do that.
Again, he like you said before with the Missouri comment, it's show me. The show me state, Missouri, show me that you can do something, Irv Smith. I like the idea
to be a tight
of him.
end that you could play that plays on Sunday that's better than Irv Smith to me.
Yeah. I like the idea of Irv Smith in that offense, but he has to show us something first.
I do too, but I'm not going to put him in my lineup and then wait all the way till Monday night. There's got to be like a tight end short and all that, but there's got to be a guy that you could play
that's more
you can put in there for Sunday.
Reliable right now than Irv Smith. He's a guy to watch this year.
If they were playing at noon, on Sunday. Or 1 o'clock, I guess, where time begins, whatever. And so if he was playing at that, then I could see maybe doing it.
Yeah, I don't want to have to go into Monday night and needing 12
you don't want to need 13 points from Irv Smith to win
No.
your matchup. You don't want that.
Now, on the other side of the field, Jalen Hurts, rushing quarterback, he's got a floor. We like Jalen Hurts as a fantasy
Absolutely.
quarterback.
So
But there's
were
some
talking
interesting
ab-
questions about this team. There's
Yeah.
some interesting things to look at. Now, Miles Sanders scored his first touchdown since, I don't know, the 80s, which was
Yeah.
awesome for him. And he's too good a
since
running
Michael
back not
Jackson
to
was
score.
moonwalking, yeah.
Right. But Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, on very few carries, each vultured a goal line touchdown from him. I think this is going to be a situation that frustrates us all year.
I think so.
long.
I think so too. So that's a backfield. Even though they led the NFL in rushing last year and they ran the ball, but a lot of that was Jalen Hurts.
Right. A lot of it's going to be the
A
quarterback.
lot of it was that. And so I was looking at Gainwell, and a lot of people recommended picking him up. I said no to that. And I'm not going to do that.
Now, Gainwell did get the passing down for the most part. He got more of the passing work.
Right.
Of the three players,
And-
of Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott, Gainwell was more so the passing back, or the receiving back, I should say. But
Right.
geez, you think about that. 9 attempts between the two other guys, the two backup guys, they vultured 2 touchdowns. You give one of those to Miles Sanders, and he scored 24 and a half points on the day. That'd be a great running back day. But
Absolutely.
I
It would
just,
be.
unfortunately, I just think it's going to be this way all year, where Sanders is going to get the bulk of the carries. He only had 13 attempts, but he had 96 yards rushing. He's a talented player.
Absolutely.
caught both
He'll
his
take
targets.
96 yards running and,
Right.
and go to sleep and be happy with it.
But between Jalen Hurts being a good running, not just a running quarterback, like running quarter, he's a good running quarterback. He's good at rushing. Between him in the backfield and Gainwell and Scott vulturing touchdowns on the goal line from Miles Sanders, I just think it's going to be a frustrating position all year for people.
Right.
Now, on the on the wide receiver front for them, this was, I don't think anybody expected what we were seeing. I think people expected A.J. Brown to look good. I don't think anybody expected A.J. Brown to look quite as good as he did, and for
No.
Devontae Smith
And,
to
and blow the
completely
doors off the place
disappear.
in the first half and have 150 yards or whatever he did.
Right. A.J.
the
Brown saw
first half.
13 targets. He saw 13 targets in the game. He caught 10 of them for 155 yards. Now, he didn't score, but you're not going to keep him out of the end zone if he's seeing 13 targets a game. You're not keeping A.J. Brown out of the
Yeah,
end
that's
zone
one of
for
the
17 weeks.
the rare wide receivers that was targeted that many times on a winning football team. So
Now, Devontae, he was one of the top. He was one of the top targeted guys in the entire league for the day. But Devontae Smith, first off, only
so
seeing
A.J.
4
Brown,
targets.
full
Yeah,
speed ahead.
A.J. Brown, I hope you got him, and he looks like every bit the player
I
that
do
we
not,
thought he was.
unfortunately, but
But Devontae
Yes.
Smith, 4 targets, 0 receptions. That hurts. No pun intended.
that
Jalen
absolutely hurts because I was not as high on him going into the season as a lot of people were.
No, I'm not.
But
I wasn't.
I
either.
didn't think he'd have no catches. Okay. And
He's a smaller framed guy. He's a smaller receiver, but he was their top option last year outside of Dallas Goedert, who did not have a great game either, with much to my
No,
chagrin.
but I'll still climb aboard the Dallas Goedert.
Oh, I'm
train.
still in on Goddard. He had more targets. The other 2 tight ends for them only had 1 target in the whole game. Dallas Goedert is still going to get his in this offense. But I'm a little concerned about the idea of Devontae Smith only getting 4 targets and not being able to catch any of them. We know Jalen Hurts isn't necessarily the world's most accurate passer to begin with, but if he's only going to be throwing 4 balls a game to Devontae Smith, and if everything's going to go A.J. Brown's way, bully for A.J. Brown, but that's going to be
Right.
concerning. Devontae Smith is too good a player, I think, to only see 4 targets per game and to not be catching any balls. I would be a bit worried if I had him. I don't want to overreact to week 1, but
Right.
I
That's-
don't
Yeah,
necessarily
don't
think he's-
overreact. Let us overreact.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll
Right?
do it for you. You don't need to overreact.
All right. Well, that's going to cover it for us for the night. We talked about all the big primetime games. We got a Bengals Cowboys preview in there. Why
That's
don't
right.
you go ahead, Kevin? Tell us real quick what you've got coming up on the docket for the week in terms of print, in terms of on the air. Where can we
Well,
find you?
on the print side, I just published my first waiver wire pickup article, and even though waivers is now been processed, there are still a lot of players on that article that are probably still on the wire. So get over there to the Belly Up Fantasy website and look that up, and get yourself some of those guys. A lot of the ones that were at the top of that list are most likely gone right now, but there are still some players on there that can possibly help your team. And so I'm going to have the pickup article for waivers that comes out every week. That's where I make my living, so to speak. And of course, you and I and Andrew have our show that comes on Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock in the Eastern time. Where Vince tells me that's where time begins. And so we got that. And then Sunday night, next Sunday night coming up is the final fantasy baseball show of the season. So you will most certainly want to check into that, because right after that becomes the championship round of fantasy baseball. So we're going to have some great stuff for you there. And you can always find me on Twitter at Kevin62 WILSEA. Yes, I'm still maintaining the SEA part, and especially after Monday night.
You can't bail out now. You can't
bail out now. And I just hope that my Seahawks can make a good showing against the 49ers, so I don't have to listen to Justin. If I don't have to do that, then I'm happy.
Justin Herrera from
happy.
the TSS Fantasy Show.
That's right.
And elsewhere around Belly Up, for those of you
That's
who,
right. He's out there, and of course he's a 49ers guy, and he's more than happy to let me have it. And so if I don't have to go through that this next Sunday, that'll be awesome.
Excellent. Well, as Kevin said, you can find me on the Sunday morning show, pregame show this Sunday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, right here, same place, same bat time, same bat channel as the
right.
cliche goes. You can always find me on Twitter at STTChaseFFB. My rankings will be updated. My weekly rankings will be updated tomorrow. I'll also have a review of last week in terms of some tidbits, some quick hits from each game from last week coming up. And, I invite you, check us out, not only on Belly Up TV here, but also check us out on bellyupfantasy.com. There's bellyupfantasysports.com. There's a ton of great content there from a lot of guys that are doing a lot of good work. So
that's right. So you definitely want to check that out.
That's it. All right. Join us back here next week, same time, 7 o'clock on Wednesday. We'll preview next week. And until then, good luck this weekend and Sláinte.